Hi, everybody, and welcome to one of our designer video panel discussions. This is part of the Fasten Off Yarnalong, and my name is Anne Blaney, also known as Annie B. Knits, and I will be the moderator and also sort of technical host today, so fingers crossed that everything goes well. I should say I am in Canada, just outside of Toronto, and we are currently being hit with what a good friend of mine called Yule-mageddon. So there are blizzard conditions outside. If my power goes out, then I trust the designers here will continue on without me and have a lovely conversation as they wish. But hopefully, with any luck, there haven't been any flickers today, so hopefully we'll be good. I am going to just quickly paste the names of the designers and their websites into the chat here. And then if I could ask each one of you to introduce yourselves and mention what it is that you design. It doesn't need to be a big, long intro, but just let us know who you are and how you fit into the Yarnalong. Maybe Yvonne, do you want to start?
Sure. So my name is Yvonne. I'm a designer, a knit and crochet technical editor, and co-publisher of The Sun and Fog. I was born and raised in San Francisco, and I still live in the Bay Area. So much of what I do can be attributed to both my parents. My mom and my grandmother taught me to knit, crochet, and sew when I was little. My mom was a math whiz and an entrepreneur. I got my love for the challenge in making my design visions work from my dad, who was an electrical engineer. I love the color orange. I love baseball, and I love spreadsheets.
Gotta love a good spreadsheet. Millie, my husband is off camera and he's laughing at me.
Who doesn't love a good
Millie,
spreadsheet?
Who doesn't love a good spreadsheet, right? I'm with my people here. This is fantastic. Millie, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Millie Tansel of Millie Tansel Makes. So this is my first year as a designer. I designed Tunisian crochet designs. And prior to that, I've been testing for a few people, and I learned how to crochet on my own, and also Tunisian crochet about 10 years ago. And yeah, similar to Yvonne, I see sort of, designing is sort of like coming up with programs, and also it has a lot to do with language as well. And those are two things, especially language, that I'm interested in. So happy to be here.
Awesome. And Fiona, do you want to go next?
Hi, I'm Fiona. I'm in Australia, so it's just after 8 o'clock on Saturday morning, Christmas Eve. I am a crochet designer, and I design boho-inspired accessories for mature women, is what I like to say. And I've been married for 34 years. I've got 2 adult children, and I live in a tiny town called Yass.
Yes, I love it.
Yeah, it is. It's a very topical expression nowadays. The Queer Eye guys came here a few years ago and did a because it was such a bit of a play on their words. My business name is Reeve Design Co. And as I was explaining earlier, my 2 grandmothers were Ruth and Eve, and I joined their names together and came up with something that I thought was a tribute to them, because they both were avid crafts women, and both of them tried to teach me to crochet and failed when I was a kid. So when I picked up the crochet hook, it's like I feel like I'm actually reliving what they were doing when I was a kid. So that's me.
That's lovely. And Jen.
Hi, I'm Jen. I'm a knitwear designer. I design under the name Synaptic Stitches. I design brioche patterns, and I love integrating all different kinds of extra techniques into my designs. So I do a lot of brioche cables, 3-color brioche, all kinds of crazy things. I try to, set up knitters to be able to sort of stand in the spotlight and, show their most bold, creative selves. And also, I really promote the idea of fearless knitting and tackling any project you want, regardless of whether the industry tells us something should be scary or too hard. It's all just sticks and string and hooks, and you can learn to do any technique if you're motivated to do it. And I currently live in Owensboro, Kentucky, but I'm a bit of a nomad. I moved around a lot. We're having fun weather issues too, so we didn't have heat several hours ago.
Oh my.
Yeah.
Hooray for
Fortunately, they
wool,
came out and
right?
fixed it very quickly.
Yes. Okay, great. So our next question, and we'll just keep going around in the same order. It's the order that the names are in the chat. The next question is, how did you get started on designing? How did you go from being a maker to being somebody who designs patterns for other makers? So Yvonne?
You're muted.
Sorry about that. So I've been knitting and crocheting since I was little, but slowed down a bit in college and after that. So when the novelty yarn craze hit in about 2005, 2006, and fuzzy scarves were all the rage, I walked into a store and said, I'm going to buy 2 balls of fuzzy yarn, make my fuzzy scarf, get that out of my system, and that's going to be it. So I think we all know how that turned out. So as I started making again, I began to change things about the designs that I was making. And I started telling myself, when I get more experience, I'll start designing. So eventually it became more about, can I do this? Can I actually design something and write the instructions to make that something and be able to communicate that to other makers? And it wasn't necessarily about being creative or having a design business as the primary goal. I saw designing and writing a pattern as a challenge and a new thing to learn how to do. So 8 or 9 years later, after that initial thought that, I'll start designing, I finally published my first pattern in 2015.
Awesome. Millie, you're up next.
Sure. So it was about the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, and I decided that I was going to do retail therapy by purchasing a lot of independently dyed yarn. And following that, I decided that I wanted to focus on Tunisian crochet, and I started pattern testing on a regular basis, actually, for one of your other folks you're going to have on one of these shows. Yeah. And I was working on one of her sweaters, and it just started clicking in my mind. I'm like, okay, wait, what if I do this instead? What if I do that instead? And it's been a while since I've seen the movie, but I feel like it was my beautiful mind moment. Just like things just kept flowing through my mind. I'm like, I've got to write this down. I've got to, share this with people. And there's plenty of room in the Tunisian crochet, family area for more designs. So I saw that as an opportunity. And just also, I've always had attention to detail. So I thought I'd be able to, share some of these ideas and come up with some new techniques to share with people who aren't as familiar with it.
Awesome. Fiona.
I was a knitter for many, many years, very slow. And I got really frustrated with how slow I was at knitting. And I've since discovered, since I've become a crocheter, I've discovered about continental knitting. And if I'd known about that years ago, I might have actually not done the transition. but I didn't. I then started cross stitching and did that for probably 4 or 5 years, and or maybe longer. Made some beautiful pictures for my walls and the like. And then a lady at my craft group asked us to help her make some flowers for her daughter, and gave us a hook and said, do this. And I'm like, this is so fast. And I haven't really looked back. As far as designing is concerned, I have never really stuck to a pattern very well. I always wanted to go on a side tangent, and it didn't take me long to actually start going from, I want to make a hat, oh, I'll just do this and this and this, and writing them down kind of became a very easy thing to do, because in those days Craftsy and was an easy platform to publish to. And so I had Craftsy and I had Ravelry and started from there.
Great. And Jen.
So I
Yes, my mom taught me to knit when I was little, and to knit and crochet, and I think I knit a couple of squares. Like, I only knew the knit stitch. I couldn't cast on or bind off. She would do that for me. And like, I really didn't take to it very much, and then rediscovered knitting when I was in grad school and fell in love with it instantly, and have not had gone more than a few days without needles in my hands ever since. And then in fall of 2019, I was leaving a job in science that I was really unhappy with. And I had said for years, I'm not going to design. There's no reason I would ever design, because there's so many amazing designers out there, and there's so many amazing patterns that I don't need to. I could fill every second of knitting time I have with amazing patterns that have already been published, not even thinking of the things that will come out in the future. And then I had a couple of things that were like my favorite techniques, which were brioche knitting and cables. And a friend gave me a Nancy Marchant pattern as a gift. It's a hat she published back in 2011 that uses both, that does brioche cables. And my mind was kind of blown. And I was like, hold on, you can put these two things I love doing, you can put them together. And I was so like, this concept of being able to put this together just got my mind spinning. It was the same thing, like Millie said, like the ideas just started pouring out, and I suddenly had all these things I wanted to try and see, okay, if I can put these two things together, what if I add something else? What if I, put this technique, can that be combined as well? And just got really excited about it. And, needed something else to focus on and dedicate my time to. So I just fell in love with designing and haven't stopped.
That's fantastic. All right. So the next question for all of you, and I have to say, I love that we have sort of half knit designers, half crochet designers, and we've got both the sort of, I don't know what the term is, standard crochet and Tunisian crochet designers. So it's great that we've got this really diverse bunch of you. What's your inspiration for patterns? Do you start with the yarn? Do you start with a technical idea? Do you start with an image of a garment or an accessory? Where does it begin for you? So we'll circle back around. We'll start again with Yvonne.
So Anne, I was just thinking the exact same thing about two knit designers and two crochet designers. And within the crochet designers, we have, standard crochet and we have Tunisian crochet. So I kind of feel like I hit the jackpot with this one today. So the things that inspire me are pretty much anything. I I think a lot of the times it's the construction. So I may see something and I wonder if I can make it work if I try a different construction, and then challenge myself to see if the construction that, I'm thinking of in my head will actually work. So when I want to try a different construction, a lot of times it's based on things that I don't like to do or things that I prefer to do over something else. So for example, I'm not a huge fan of seaming. So that made me think of a different way to construct a current design I'm working on. Another example is I prefer how decreased stitches look over how increased stitches look. So if I'm designing something that needs shaping, rather than start with a small number of stitches and then grow it, which uses increases, I'll try to start with a larger number of stitches and use decreases, simply because I just like how decreased stitches look over increased stitches. I also love Japanese stitch dictionaries, and they've become the first place that I'll go to source stitch patterns if I have like some blank canvas to fill in. That's like one of the first places that I'll go to look for something.
Awesome. Yeah, those stitch dictionaries are just mind-blowing. I'm laughing that you say you do things to avoid the things you don't like. I have a friend who literally designed a pair of gloves that have webbing between all the fingers, and they alternate between ribbing between the fingers and double knit tubes for the actual fingers, because she hates weaving in ends. And this way she had one end at the cast on and one end at the bind off, and there was no other end. There was no cut in the yarn the whole way. It means you have webbed paws, but it's a great solution. And it's amazing how those things can just inspire, an entirely new technique. Millie, over to you. Where's your inspiration?
Sure. I think my story is a lot like Yvonne's in some way. It's a curiosity to see what something would be like. So the first design that I did, it was what I had in my mind. I was like, how can I put together these architectural details in this way? The next design was, what would Tunisian crochet be like if I used an 8mm hook and fingering weight yarn? Another one was, what if I combined the stitches in this pattern to sort of hide and reveal yarn throughout the pattern to make diamonds? Another one was, could I design a shawl that includes beads where it's not too many beads, but it is constantly changing and constantly interesting? So it's really, I usually have some kind of quest in my mind that I want to design something along some kind of new lines. And then, I have to say, like I mentioned earlier, I invested in a lot of yarn. So sometimes I'll just go stash diving and say, I really need to use this yarn because it's here to be used. So yeah, colors, textures, and just, finding new adventures, I guess, is the best way to put it.
Awesome. Fiona, over to you.
The yarn. I pick up a piece of yarn and I go, what do you want to be? And sometimes I start crocheting and I have no idea what I'm actually going to make. I will do a row of foundation stitches, which is I like doing the foundation and chainless starting stitches because I hate chains, hate working into chains. And so I do that, and I might go, oh yeah, these can be gloves, or this can be a cowl, or this can be a hat, and it just depends on what I'm feeling at the time. There have been a couple of designs, and actually my most popular design that was constructed around the idea that I wanted to do something with a mandala. And so I've initially designed a top that had a mandala centered in the front and a plain back, and just really simple, but basically growing a garment out of a mandala. And after I did that one, I went, I think I can make a poncho. So Desert Dreams poncho is my most popular, most sold design, and it's as boho as you can get. So
That's lovely.
that's-
And what kind of yarn are you using? Is it cotton? Is it wool? Is it?
For those two designs, I used cotton.
Mhm.
In Australia, there's a amazing mill called Bendigo Woolen Mills, and they have this 8-ply or DK weight cotton that is just soft and drapey and perfect to do garments with, anything with really. And I'm an indie designer on their website, but I haven't got very many patterns there because I've got to have them made and photographed in their wool in order to get them on their website. So
Right,
it's fun.
right.
Yes, I use a lot of wool. I use a lot of merino, and that's what I prefer to use. But
Another thing that
cotton,
Australia is known for.
oh yes, and we have some beautiful yarns.
Yes, yes, you do. All right, and Jen, over to you. Where are your inspirations?
So I love using knitting to challenge myself and to like keep my brain engaged. Miles of stockinette stitch will put me to sleep really, really quickly. I get bored pretty easily, so I always want to be trying something new or making, new combinations, seeing if I can put things together in a way that I haven't tried before. So a lot of my inspiration is just me going, okay, I discovered that I can do brioche and cables together. Can I add that? Can I do syncopated brioche with the brioche and cables? Can I add a third color? Can I, combine double brioche and single brioche? Can I just start throwing techniques together and see what happens? So it's a lot of what drives me is just what can I make happen? I also have been leaning into lately. One of the things I find to be really fun is looking at classic cable motifs and classic Aran sweaters and things like that, and figuring out how to adapt those cable designs into brioche cables. So like the center piece on the sweater I'm wearing was an adaptation of trying to do a staghorn cable in brioche. And I have a brioche or a cable stitch dictionary that I'm often going to for inspiration to see how can I put a new twist on some of these classic forms that have already been out there.
That sweater you're wearing is just amazing. My eye just keeps going straight to it. It's just
Thank you.
incredible. And the piece behind you on the mannequin as well is lovely. I am going to, just to be mindful of time, so that we still have time for some audience questions as well. I'm going to ask you each 2 questions, sort of 3 questions, and maybe we can each go through those together. So the first question, that is sort of 2 questions, is what are your favorite things to design, and are these different from your favorite things to make? Which I think is a great question. We've kind of heard from most of you about the things you like to design, but are they what you would be making for yourself anyway? Or are there other sort of pressures in terms of what will sell, or using yarn support or anything like that maybe changed from what you would be making for yourself? And the other question is, what sort of things are we going to see from you next? What is percolating in your brain? So back around to you, Yvonne.
So I like to design the same things that I like to make, which are, so they're the exact same things. So shawls, cowls, and ponchos. Shawls and cowls, because they don't necessarily need to fit, like the fit isn't crucial. Although I do think that size parameters are helpful so that something isn't too big or way too small. And I like poncho designs, or most poncho designs and constructions have a fair amount of
Finger report. Thank you very much for that. That was distracting. I apologize. Yvonne, you were saying you very much like to make the things that the things that you design are very much the things that you like to make. Do you want to sort of go back to that idea a little bit?
Oh,
Sorry about
yeah.
that.
That's okay. We can edit that out.
We sure can.
I like to make shawls, cowls, and ponchos. Shawls and cowls because fit isn't crucial. There's leeway. Although I do think that size parameters and the way I design, I do have size parameters because you also don't want them to be too small or too big. And most poncho designs and constructions have a fair amount of leeway. So exact fit isn't critical for ponchos. So that's what I like to both design and make and wear myself. As for things that are coming up for me, I have a few designs coming up. Most of them are actually, they're all contracted at this point. I have 2 designs for In Tandem due out in spring and summer of 2024. So that's kind of a long ways away. But I'm really excited about the spring design because I'm doing that different construction method on a cowl shape. And my summer design is a crochet cowl, and that is my first crochet design. I also have something coming up in December with a publisher. And then as far as self-published designs, I don't really have anything with hard dates right now.
Awesome. Millie, over to you.
Sure. So my favorite thing to design so far is what I've actually first designed. It's a cowl, something worked in the round. So Tunisian crochet has some great techniques that you can do in the round where you're using 2 different yarns at the same time, and you can change the stitch so that it's sort of more opaque in one instance, or more, you can see the other yarn in another instance. So I absolutely love the color work that you can do with Tunisian crochet in the round, and that's my favorite. As far as things that I like to make, I typically tend towards the cowls and the shawls as well. I have been working on some garment tests for other designers, so I would like to get to the point where I can combine the Tunisian crochet in the round with some simple garment designs in the future, because I'm really excited about the possibility of that. And as far as things that are coming up, I have a couple of patterns that I've been asked to make for a couple of yarn dyers, which I don't have enough details on that to share at this point, certainly. But one of the other things that I'm working on is I'm working with some, it's called assigned pooling yarn with Tunisian crochet. So it's different than with crochet, and it's different than the way it is with knitting because of the way that Tunisian crochet has both a forward pass and a return pass. So I've been experimenting with trying to put that into a shawl because I picked up some really pretty assigned pooling yarn over the last year. So, yep.
All right. And I apologize. Somehow in all of that, Jen has also gotten kicked out of the meeting. So we're just trying to get her back in. But meanwhile, Fiona, do you want to talk about the things you design versus the things you like making, and your sort of upcoming things that are tickling your brain?
I think over the years, my design, what I've designed is basically what I wanted to make. I make a lot of gloves, I make a lot of beanies, cowls, ponchos, and I wear them all. So, well, maybe not all of them. Some of them have just been a little bit too much for what my actual style is. But I've made things and gone, wow, I can't believe I made that. And I wouldn't wear it, but other people will, and other people buy the designs. So yeah, that's been it. My gloves have been, I really, really like making gloves with a half thumb, and I've got a special technique for joining at here where you don't have a big hole, which is very
Ooh,
very nice.
intriguing. Intriguing.
And as far as what's on my plans at the moment, I have a set of, well, a group of designs that I'm working on with heart motifs, which I'm thinking I'll probably release towards the end of January. That will be great for Valentine's Day. I've actually already made and given away two shawls in this design, and I'm like, I need to have one that I can actually have photographed, because everyone's going, oh, I love that, and I'm like, okay, you can have that one. And so it's obviously going to be popular. I'm just looking forward to being able to show people. And yeah, so I've got accessories coming, and I've only recently started making shawls part of my regular design process, and I only do rectangles. I'm not a triangle shawl person. I like the wrap style, which can also be scrunched up into a scarf for winter.
I have to say, I am a big fan of the shawly scarfy things for winter. They are very necessary. We have not yet got Jen back in the room, which is unfortunate. So what I'm going to do for now, we'll come back to her with the questions when we get her back in. But what I'm going to do for now is ask you about color, because we actually put this to our Fasten Off Yarnalong audience before we started doing these panels, and we said, what questions do you folks want to know? And one of the questions was, how on earth do you pick and decide on color? And it's fascinating, because I think color is a thing that either comes very naturally to people or that terrifies them. So I'd love to know what your perspectives on that are. Yvonne, can we start back around with you?
Sure. So color is actually one of those things for me, and in my design process, that is not at the top of the list. Like, colors don't usually inspire me. I guess that's just not how my brain works, and I'm okay with that. So what I do is I usually try to get help from the dyer that I'm working with. So if there's maybe a color that they are wanting to promote, I'm happy to use that color. If I'm working with a publication, they choose the colors and I don't have to worry about it. And I'm totally okay with that too. If I do have a say in colors, I'll choose something that I think is, pretty neutral or appealing to people when they look at the sample. If it were up to me, I would make everything in orange. But orange isn't necessarily appealing to a lot of people. So, if I designed everything in orange, I can imagine that, I wouldn't get that many looks at the designs that I have out there. So that's why I try to stick to neutral colors or colors that I think would have a more mass appeal. So.
Fantastic. And that is the interesting challenge, isn't it? The tension between I'm designing the things that I want to make and I'm designing the things that I want to sell.
Exactly.
Next up, let's go back over to you, Millie. Your thoughts about color?
Yeah, well, I love combining colors together and I love seeing how they work together. When I think back on my designs, however, so far this year I've published 6 designs, and half of them were colors that the yarn dyer had put out together in some kind of set. You know, I know some yarn dyers and they are very good with colors. And so it was fun to just take what they had or take what they offered and put that together in a design. And as far as the other 3 designs, they were just, you know, what I felt like using. So yeah, I tend to, you know, go towards the cooler colors, and yet I find myself crocheting with oranges and reds and things like that all the time. So I don't really have a real straightforward answer, I guess, for this, but I guess about half the time it's I let the dyer sort of lead me as far as what colors I use.
Great. And back around to you, Fiona. What are your color options?
Pink, purple, teal. Gee, what am I surrounded by? Again, if the dyer or the magazine wants a particular colorway, I'll work with it. But generally, my stash is full of the colors I like because I buy the yarns I like, and burgundy is also a favorite color. So I've done a bit of burgundy lately. I've done, yeah. I don't really like the warm colors, and I sometimes force myself to use them, but it's not something I actually don't feel like I have as much skill matching the warm colors because I don't wear them so much, so I don't know how they work together as well, I guess. Yeah.
It's fascinating what different people find is the skill and not the skill. Yeah. I'm going to turn to the audience to see now if we have any questions from the audience. And if anybody has any questions, if you want to, we've got 2. We've got one from Kathleen and one from Amber. So Amber, let's start with you. Do you want to unmute and pose your question, or do you want to type it into the chat?
I'm here. Hi. So everything from this panel, especially that's been said about how you've transitioned from being a maker to being a designer, it really resonates with me. And so my question to anyone who wants to answer is, do you have advice for aspiring designers, especially regarding like getting over the imposter syndrome?
That is a fantastic question.
Ooh, Mimi.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. I got some very good advice from a fellow designer when I was first starting out, and that is don't expect to make money, especially right away. Just it's not easy to you know, have a really strong start and sell tons of designs, and that is typical. So if you start out designing and you aren't selling many designs, don't let that bother you. And then I would say, you know, not necessarily for the imposter syndrome, but as a designer, heavily recommend both technical editing and testers. because they are going to find things that you swear that you would not have made that mistake, but you did. And so definitely recommend, crossing all those T's and dotting all those I's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll add to that if you like.
Sure.
The important thing with designing is that you need to publicize what you've made, because no one's going to be able to find you unless you actually put it out there. And there are a number of Facebook groups and the like where they're quite happy for designers to post, I've got this new pattern, blah 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 blah. So find those groups. There's a lot that don't like it, so you've got to avoid them from that point of view. But yeah, that's one really important thing. And also get a group of testers. I've got, I don't know, 80 on my list, and I send designs out to 80 people, and 5 or 6 might say, I've got time and I want to test this particular design. And that works for me. So
That's amazing. That many. That's
I've built
fantastic.
it
Yeah.
over like 8 years. So
Yeah,
I
of
guess,
course. But
Yeah.
that's fantastic. Anybody else want to tackle that question? I guess that's Yvonne. Do you have any perspective on the sort of imposter syndrome situation?
So, I mean, I definitely know what that feels like to have that imposter syndrome, at the very beginning. And even now, it still creeps in a little bit. I think the important thing is you just have to keep doing it. If you love what you're putting out there and you have confidence in what you're putting out there, keep doing it, because you'll find your audience. You will find what works for you. And pretty soon, people catching on to what you're doing will also give you that confidence. But if you can at all have the confidence start within you first, that is a big step.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think I'll maybe add there from my own perspective, as a knitter who has dabbled in designing from time to time, that having a good group of friends around you who are also cheering you on and interested in what you're doing and eager to see what you're doing, that makes a huge difference too, right? Kathleen, you also have a question, or you have your hand up.
It's kind of a strange question, and I suspect it's really just for the sort of the crocheters, because Fiona, you're the second designer I've heard in probably like the last 2 or 3 days say, I don't even know what I'm doing when I start. I just start, right? And I'm like pretty much exclusively a knitter, and it's so linear, and in my head, it needs to be planned so much that whenever I hear that, I can barely wrap my head around it. And so I was wondering if you could sort of take us through, like, how does that even work? Like, what makes you think you know what to do from there when you start, and like what kinds of things just kind of come to you? And I'm just trying to get like an insight into the brain workings of this mysterious process,
Yep, I understand. I'll give you an example. Last July, I think it was, I was sitting in the orthodontist waiting room with my daughter, and we had an hour and a half wait because everything was running late. They always do. And I had a ball of 8-ply or DK, sorry, Australian, alpaca yarn in my hand, and I started making. I had a hook, I had some yarn, and I just started making. And during the course of that waiting time, I designed a glove. And that glove ended up being published. Well, it must have been earlier in the year, actually, because it was published in June in Homespun magazine here in Australia. And I made, so the first version of anything is often just made because I'm kind of, oh yeah, I'll do this, and yeah, I'll do this, and because gloves are in the round, you can change what you're doing each round, and it's not going to matter if you don't like it, you unpull it. Frogging's a normal part of every designer's life, and yeah, that's probably it. Because crochet is so flexible, and you can go, oh, I need to increase, so you increase. You don't have to think about the where or the how so much as you do have to with knitting, and you don't have to plan quite so far in advance either. Yeah, does that answer your question?
Oh, yes, thank you.
Does anybody else on the panel want to chime in on that? And whether you're a planner ahead or have the idea fully formed in your head, or whether you launch in with your yarn and your tools and see where it goes?
So a few years ago, when I was working for my LYS, we were looking for another staff person. And I have a friend who is a crocheter, so I thought, oh, she might want to work here. So when I started talking to her about it, she's a crocheter, and she said, you know, I would be interested, but I don't know how to read a pattern. And that blew my mind away, because I am that planner. I am that, you know, I have to plan out every row. I have to know where I'm increasing or decreasing, or, you know, doing whatever I'm doing. As I like to say, I like to control where I end up rather than letting where I end up control me. So, and I thought about that, and I realized, because I do crochet also, crochet is much more, in crochet, it is so much easier to just kind of go and design as you're going. Not that I've done that, but I could see where my friend was coming from when she said, I just start crocheting and I just go and do whatever I'm going to do, and it works out. And she said, that's why I don't know how to read a pattern. And I mean, I don't know if she had ever tried, but that just gave me a whole new perspective on, you know, crochet and the differences between knitting and crochet.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I mean, so I'm from the Kitchener-Waterloo Knitters Guild, which was one past member is Debbie New, who knit a lace coracle, a lace boat, just because she could. So there are people out there, I hear, who are knitters and who go freeform and go off and let the yarn take them. I am a planner. We were talking earlier about loving spreadsheets. I'm an event planner by day. So I am also very much in that, like, but I need to know where I'm going with this. So it is absolutely fascinating. Now, oh, look, we have Jen coming back in. It's amazing.
Awesome.
Welcome back, Jen. I think she's just getting connected. So hooray, that is a relief. Jen, are you back with us? You can unmute yourself. Well, she's just getting her camera set up again. I think she's on a different device. There we
Can you hear me
go.
now?
We can hear you.
Okay, sorry,
Fabulous.
my computer wouldn't reconnect, but my phone will. So
Fabulous. Brilliant solution. Welcome back. Sorry about all of the shenanigans. I'm going to come back to you then with a couple of questions that we've talked about with the rest of the group, and then we'll see. I think there's one more question from the floor from Lindsay that she posted in the chat, but we'll see if she wants to come on screen, or I can just read out her question. But so the questions that the others have answered since you were gone is what are your favorite things to design, and how are those different from your favorite things to make? What sorts of things will we see from you next? And also, what are your thoughts on color? Do you have favorite color combinations? How do you approach colors? Color a struggle? Is color something that comes naturally to you?
okay, so first was
what do you like to design, and is
Yes.
that the same or different from the things that you would make if you were not a designer, if you were just making for yourself?
So I love knitting sweaters. I am a sweater knitter. My favorite thing to make. And I love designing sweaters. I have lots of ideas for sweaters. But I also recognize that like sweaters are a lot of work. They take me a really long time to design, and a lot of, cost to make and to edit and all of that. So for me, it's not practical to have them be my only thing. So I do a lot of other things to sort of supplement and have things that are more accessible for the knitter and are more accessible for me as the designer to be able to get through in a reasonable amount of time. But I will always go back to making sweaters because they make me happy. And things I have coming up. I have a couple, I actually have stuff here. This cowl will be coming out soon. I just got the edits back from my editor, so hopefully this will be available in a month or so. And the hat here, sneak peek, I haven't shared this yet. So I got those. I've got a couple of spring summer tops that are going to be coming out this spring. I have 2 more sweaters I'm working on for next fall. Another cowl. I've got a bunch of things coming up. So it's going to be an exciting year for 2023. Lots of new projects coming. And then in terms of color, I love bright colors. Purple is my favorite color, so it's hard for me to not want to work in purple. I have to like actively tell myself that I have to choose other color palettes and I can't just do everything in purple. I was looking at my Instagram recently and realized like, oh, I'm not doing as good of a job of that as I thought I was. So I love bright colors. I love a lot of contrast. I do a lot of like jewel tones with whites or neutrals, just to get things that really pop, because the kinds of designs I like to do have a lot of, graphic element to it that I really like having a bright light color against a darker background. But just like in general, personally, I love bright color. I sort of, use the line jokingly, if I look like a rainbow threw up on me, I'm kind of doing it right. Like that makes me happy. And I, both my husband and I have had like coworkers comment of like, oh, you like to wear colors, don't you? Or like, you're really brave to wear that bright color. And I'm like, there's nothing wrong with like wanting to wear colors. So
I love it. My
yeah.
sibling started a hashtag on Instagram called December dopamine dressing. and
Nice.
they were posting every day. They're a teacher. December is a slog with
Mhm.
COVID and RSV and flu and everything that's going around, and just December in general and life. And so they've been wearing the brightest colors every day, as much of a rainbow as possible, and just really encouraging others to just lean into the color. And here I am wearing a black top, but
Yeah, I mean, one of my favorite things about knitting is like being able to go to a yarn shop in the middle of like a dreary Midwest winter and just be surrounded by color and brightness and things that are, happy and not just gray.
yep.
And if I love it in the yarn store, why not wrap myself in it too and wear it?
And I love that it doesn't matter what's on the hangers in the store this season. You wear the colors when you're making it yourself. You can wear the colors that you love, and you can really build that sort
Yeah.
of personal palette. Is a beautiful thing. All right, we are nearly at the hour. So what I'm going to do is I will read out Lindsay's question. She doesn't have her camera and mic set up, so I will read that out. We'll do one last go around, and then if anybody else has anything, that's completely fine. We can stay on a bit longer, but I don't want to keep anybody beyond what they've committed to. So we'll go with Lindsay's question. She says she loves hearing design backstories, and she says, what is one of your most memorable stories for one of your designs? Yvonne, do you want to take this one first? You are muted.
Okay, sorry about that. So I was trying to think if I have any like really cool stories for any of my designs, and I can't think of any. But I will, I guess, talk about the inspiration for my Knit the Season design. So as I said in the beginning, I love baseball. And as you could probably guess from my love of spreadsheets, I also love math. And I love baseball statistics. So it started with the temperature blanket or temperature scarf. I decided, and I saw someone else doing this too, so I can't say that it was my idea, but I saw someone knitting a baseball season into a scarf, and I thought, oh wow, that would be really cool to do. So I said, okay, I can't do this in straight stockinette or straight garter the whole season, because that's 162 games, and that would just, like Jen, miles and miles of stockinette would, drive me crazy. So I decided to, do some stitch patterns, do it a little bit differently. And I just did it for myself at first. So that thing turned into, it was this big rectangular thing, and I eventually turned it into a poncho. And then after that, I decided, I think I can design something to, put out in the world for anybody else who, if they love baseball and want to knit the season, they can do that. So I did, and I was working at the yarn shop at the time. And I asked the owner if I could, do a knit along with it. She loved the idea. So we put together some kits. And we probably had about 15 people doing that just locally. And they could knit for whatever team they wanted to knit for. And it was really fun. And so after that, I designed 2 more. And I haven't decided if I'm going to design anymore. I would love to, but we'll just see what happens. But that's just something that, was really fun to do at the time. Oh, and just as an aside, for Knitting the Season, not only did we record the wins and losses, but we also recorded the scores using beads.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's so cool. I love the way that you know, the textile can represent so much data in it. That's
Exactly.
fantastic. My
Exactly.
husband is a big sports stats nerd, both baseball and hockey. So
Yes.
I'm wearing a headset. He's not hearing what you've just said, but now
Oh.
he's like, oh, knitting and baseball.
So there was a yarn dyer in the shop at the time, and when she saw my first project, the one that I had just done for me, she looked at it and said, "Oh my gosh, look at all that data that's in that."
Yes,
So I was like, "Oh, I didn't think about putting it that way, but she's right."
absolutely. Absolutely. Millie, over to you. Is there one particular story or background detail for a design that stands out for you?
Yeah, so the beaded shawl that I referred to, it's sitting right here behind me. I chose the name Flying at Night for this shawl because the way that I intersperse the beads throughout, it's as if you're flying at night and you see all the little lights along the roads, and the beads are kind of in that pattern. They're in different straight lines, and they're at different angles from each other, and the textures. So I think so far it's my favorite name for a pattern because it just evokes such a visual memory for me of, flying at night with the clouds, sometimes hiding the lights, sometimes showing the lights, and the beads are a little subtle on the camera. So it's the same effect. People walk up to the shawl and they realize, oh, there's something sparkling there. Oh, hey, there's actually beads. It's not like overpowering. It's kind of just subtle and pretty and sophisticated, I guess you could say. So
Lovely. Fiona.
A few years ago, I'd be 2.5 years ago, I visited a very good yarn dyer in Australia called Great Southern Yarns, and they handed me 2 skeins of their sport weight SRS merino. So SRS merino is long fibers, and they're specially grown and they don't need as much processing. I don't really understand it all that much, but it's really special. And they handed me 2 skeins and said, take this and design something. And it was in a color called Storm Clouds at Dawn. And I designed this and I called it Spring in the Mountains because it kind of reminded me of storm clouds and spring and mountains. And so the storm, I mean, I would never probably have chosen to make anything in this color because, as I've already explained, while there's purple and blue, it's not really my bent, but it's a gorgeous, simple design that just you can repeat certain sections and make it as wide or as narrow as you like, and it can be a scarf.
That's lovely. That's lovely. And Jen, over to you.
So I don't have too many like big stories of my inspiration, but sort of the one that comes to mind is the Braintree shawl that I published a few months ago. Actually originally came from I have participated in a podcast called Knittergy. And it's a panel of 4 of us, and we come up with different topics to talk about each episode. And at the end of each episode, we come up with a challenge of something to work on for the next episode. And we had one challenge at the start of the year that was, for the new year, and it was like themed about new beginnings. And we had a bunch of like movies that we were referencing that were things of people starting over. And one of them was the movie version of the Cheryl Strayed book Wild. And so the idea was to use something that like represented new beginnings and that was that would help the protagonist of whatever movie you chose to do, and then come up with some concept that could work for that. And normally we just end up doing swatches and have, you know, little creative ideas is just to spur thinking of design in new ways. But for that one, I had this idea of like, okay, like a tree silhouetted against a sunrise, and backpacking and hiking, and something that could be linked to that. And I just got like, I fell in love with the idea and just had to run with it. And I have like a little swatch that I made to like prove that I could do it. And that's what I showed for the podcast, but then like spent the rest of the year like finding the perfect yarn for it, and like had to have that gradient, sunrise gradient to go behind the tree, and you know, finding everything to actually flesh that out into a full design. So it's kind of fun to have different ways to spark creativity and inspiration.
That's so cool. I love it. I think we are well past the time that we said, so I don't want to keep anybody too long, but thank you all so much for joining us. Thank you to the guests. No thank you to the gentleman who joined us earlier. I will be doing some editing of the video, I think, before we get this posted on the YouTube channel. And thank you especially to the speakers. And Jen, thank you for being so patient and trying all the different ways to rejoin.
Sorry that I struggled so hard with that.
Oh no, it's technology is just a delight. I work with Zoom every day and it finds new ways to confuse and surprise. So but seriously, thank you, all of you. Thank you for being part of the Yarnalong. It's been just such a joy. I'm going to stop the recording now, but if people want to hang out and chat longer, that's absolutely fine.
Yeah,